WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisEye to 44321.
Collin McNamara of Stevens Point is the Democratic candidate for the 24th Senate District. The election is November 5th. Collin McNamara, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you very much for having me today.
So thank you for participating in the candidate interview, and I'll start by asking you, what's your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
So I would say my campaign's key message is about really restoring the faith and confidence of the voters back in Madison and back in our government. Everywhere I go across the district, I hear people who are displeased with both parties, who just want stuff to get done. They don't care about the politics of the day. They just want real solutions to the real problems facing their lives. So you know what? I want people to be able to believe in their senators and their representatives. I want people to know that when they call down to Madison, they're going to have a senator who answers the phone, who's taking notes, and who's actually going to care about the hard issues facing their lives. So I'm running to restore our Wisconsin values that I was raised on and growing up in a small town not far away in Iola, Wisconsin, where it didn't matter if you were a Democrat or Republican. It was the values of helping your neighbor. So honesty, integrity, empathy, respect, and hard work. Values I think we could use a lot more of in our politics.
So if you're elected to the Senate, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
Yeah, so I think that the number one bill that is on the minds of a lot of people right now is protecting our private wells and making sure that we're getting our wells tested for PFAS contamination and all of that. We've done an amazing job protecting public wells and getting grants for that and stuff like that. However, at the time, we still have a lot to be desired in terms of private wells and making sure that, you know, lots of Wisconsinites do not have access to city wells and municipal wells, so we need to make sure that we're taking care of them as well.
So if you're elected to the Senate, you're entering during a biennial budget year, and the state's projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What would be your top two priorities for use of that surplus funding?
Yeah, so I think that fortunately, this is not going to be my first biennium budget. While I may not have been in Madison in the legislature, I have had experience when I was working on campus with the Student Government Association, advocating for policies and making sure that we can make life better for people across system and across the political spectrum. And so I would say that my top two priorities are going to be providing middle-class tax relief and actual tax relief to the middle class, making sure that more money is going back into their pockets. With rising costs of everyday essentials, we know that there's people who are struggling to make ends meet. And I want to make sure that we're providing that access to them. The other is making sure that our communities and our schools and our fire departments and our police departments have the resources that they need through more shared revenue to make sure that we're not going to referendum every several months. We're projected to have our largest state surplus, and right now that money is going to be sitting in an account in Madison because our politicians can't agree on how to spend it. I think that's wrong, as schools are facing financial cliffs, as fire departments and public safety officials are having to decide to go to referendum just to keep the community safe. That's wrong, and that's fiscally irresponsibility. So I want to make sure we're providing middle-class tax relief and providing our communities with relief as well.
You mentioned schools as a priority. K-12 education is a leading issue for many voters. What do you think is going well in K-12 education, and what do you think needs to change?
So I think that our schools are doing an absolutely amazing job keeping up with what they need to with the resources they've been provided. Over the last decade or so, public education has been made public enemy number one from K-12 all the way through university and technical colleges, and that's wrong. It's our future. We need to be investing in it. And so I would say that what they're doing very well is I get to see all these schools with resilience and showing up. I know what it's like to see the energy and enthusiasm of the cheering on the home team and the stands full on a Friday night at a football game. But you know what? There's still a lot to be desired, and that comes through funding in a lot of ways. Our schools are doing what they can with the resources they've been given, but it's falling short of inflationary costs, and it's falling short of where we need to be in order to keep educating our students and keep them informed and make them full, viable candidates for the workforce.
You touched on higher education. I want to ask you, what do you think the future of Wisconsin's higher education system of four-year colleges, two-year colleges, and technical colleges? What does that future look like, and where should the legislature be focusing?
Yeah, so I think that the future of higher education should be very bright. And, I know that there's calls that say that with changing economy and changing demographics that the UW system and our higher education system can't be all things to all people. I think that's wrong. The purpose of the UW system and our higher education system is the Wisconsin idea, and that is to provide that access to every student and meet the needs of every student who walks onto that campus who is looking for an education. And so I'm very optimistic about the future of the UW system. I've fought for the UW system in the past, and I think right now we need to make sure that we're not looking at the UW system, or we're not looking at the technical college system, and we're not looking at education, period, as an expenditure on a spreadsheet, but rather one of the most important assets in our state's history. We need to make sure that we're providing the future with the resources they need to take over the workforce.
You support an increase in funding for the Universities of Wisconsin
Absolutely.
system. What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how do you propose to address it?
So I think that our state's biggest workforce development challenge is we need to be making sure that we are training our workers and our students, and that starts in high school with apprenticeship programs, and then it goes into the university and technical colleges systems too. We have to understand that the economy is complex, and that we need people who are going into every field, and we need to make sure that they have the resources to achieve their dreams and their potential. So whether that be going through an apprenticeship for automotive, like we see in some of my school districts, or through welding at other school districts in the 24th district, those are important programs, and we need to make sure that we're creating an economy that works for everyone, that's made in Wisconsin. I'm not just looking to create an economy that's made in America. I want to make sure that it's made here in Wisconsin. That includes bringing manufacturing jobs back to the 24th district.
Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Yeah, so I think the main thing that we need to make sure is that workers are the backbone of our economy. And Wisconsinites are working hard. They've taken it on the chin time and time again, and we need to make sure that we're protecting them with proper wages, proper overtime protections, and proper worker protections. And that's why I'm proud to be pro-labor, and that's why I'm going to support everything I can to make sure that we are supporting local workers and retaining workers here in Wisconsin, and making sure that we're making Wisconsin a place that they can be proud of and call home.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
Yes, so I am aware of the issue, and I think that if bad actors are going to be trying to manipulate the market and try and benefit themselves, we need to make sure that we're holding them to account through proper protections. Our workers, like I said before, are the backbone of our state and our country. And the middle class has taken it on the chin. And we need to make sure that we're protecting them, protecting their wages, protecting their benefits, making sure that if someone wants to try and cheat the system, that's not what's best for Wisconsin. That's not what's best for our workers. And I will do everything I can to make sure that we're protecting the workforce in the state of Wisconsin.
Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and which best addresses rental housing affordability? Is it rent control, or building more rentals, or some other solution?
Yeah, so affordable housing is an issue that I hear a lot about. As someone who just recently had to relocate because I was priced out of one apartment, and I was able to find one that was also affordable. But you know what? There's a lot of people who can't do that. And we need to be making sure that we're keeping an eye on those housing costs. And I understand that, you know what, I was very privileged to be able to find another place, but people can't do that. And so what we need to be making sure is that whether that's through rent, looking through rent controls and ways to lower rent and costs, or through grants for first-time home buyers, or different things like that, we need to be making sure that the legislature is working diligently to make sure that housing is affordable, because we just talked about the workforce. We're not going to be able to keep people in the state of Wisconsin if they can't afford a place to live. So we need to make sure that we're creating those places to live.
Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that we need to acknowledge is that the hospital closures out west are some of the most deeply troubling and concerning things to be seeing. You know, we were talking earlier about the state's budget surplus that we're projected to have. We're seeing a state budget surplus, and yet we're still talking about hospitals closing and people being denied care in these areas. And so the first thing that I think we need to do is accept the Medicaid and Badger Care expansion money, And so that is going to be critical to expand access to thousands of Wisconsinites, particularly lower income, who may not have other options. And so 41 other states plus Washington, D.C. have already accepted this money. This is Wisconsin tax dollars going to Washington that they're saying, hey, we'll give it back to you. And right now, Wisconsin, the legislature is currently playing politics around it. I'm not interested in playing politics around health care and with people's health. This is deeply personal. We need to make sure that we're protecting those with pre-existing conditions. We need to make sure that we're protecting low-income Wisconsinites. We need to make sure that the choice between getting a medical treatment should not be at the expense of putting food on the table.
Mental health care is also a growing concern for Wisconsinites and a concern for state and county budgets. What are you hearing on this issue in your district, and how would you address mental health care?
So I think that the number one thing that we're seeing in recent years is that the stigma around talking about mental health is going down. And that's a very good thing. We need to be making sure that we're talking about the challenges facing people's lives and show that, you know what, having emotions is normal, and all of that is completely 100% part of the human existence. And so mental health funding is absolutely something that we need to be funding, and we need to make sure that, you know, there's not long waiting lists or long wait times to get in, and there needs to be crisis intervention teams. And you know what? We talk a lot about it when we talk about public safety. We talk about it when we talk about proper policing. And I've talked with police officers and sheriffs who want to make sure that we also have those resources, that training available to them, so that way we are not sending them into a hostile situation, which is really a mental health concern, and for critical care counseling, not law enforcement responses.
How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion?
Yeah, so abortion, I grew up in a Catholic household, and I was raised to believe that a person's medical decisions are some of the most deeply personal and private decisions they will ever make in their life. So you know what, it's not my place, and it's not any politician's place to tell someone what they can or cannot do with their body. And so, you know, the rhetoric around this issue is deeply troubling to me. Because if you take out the politics of it, it boils down to a very simple question. Do we trust women to make decisions about their own bodies? I do. I support privacy, and I support medical freedom. And I will always stand up for a woman's right to choose and for our doctors to make the best health care decisions they can.
Is there any number of weeks as a limit on abortion that you support?
So I think that we would have to take a lot longer of a look at that, but do I support late-term abortions or anything like that? Absolutely not. I think we need to be making sure that we're trusting women to make decisions about their body, and we're trusting medical professionals. There are complications that can happen, and we need to be making sure that we're cognizant. So I don't want to put a strict timeline on abortion, because if a complication happens, we need to be making sure that we can make the best medical decisions possible.
What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed, and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of our aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Well, so, you know, for as much as road maintenance may sometimes be a little bit of a hindrance to a trip or something like that, or may add a few more minutes on, I'm glad that we see so many of our roads getting fixed. but there's still a lot more that's left to be desired. And so I think that in addition to just taking care of our current infrastructure, whether that be roads or bridges or all of that, I think that we should invest in a high-speed rail system and public transportation, making sure that, you know what, if we can connect Wisconsin through rail, I think that's going to be where the next generation is able to start commuting across the state of Wisconsin, so we can ease the burden on the environment, but also ease the burden on our aging roads, and gives us time to be able to fix those as well.
Talking about the environment, PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. I know you've talked about this as an issue. How would you propose to address it?
So I think the first thing, especially with PFAS, is acknowledging the issue and making sure that we expand access to grants that we currently have for public projects and making sure that we protect those programs. But then in addition to those public programs, we also need to be making sure that we're taking care of our private wells and private homeowners as well.
We are down to the last two questions. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
So I would say that the biggest difference between my opponent and I is our fundamental understanding of the job. I believe that the role of a senator is to be a representative of all the people, not just when it's politically convenient, but also when it's difficult. Showing up matters, and showing up in really hard areas to answer questions is what matters most. And so I know experience is on the minds of a lot of voters. And while I may not have been in Madison for the last 8 years, I believe that that's a very good thing, because things are moving in the wrong direction. We need to get started fixing all this. I'm a working class guy from a small town. I know what it's like to grow up on Main Street, and I'll be a senator who knows what it's like to grow up on Main Street and will always represent the interests of Main Street.
Well, final question. Let's say you're elected to the Senate. You get this magic wand you can use in the state capitol and have just one issue resolved in a way that brings all people, all parties together. What is that issue?
So I think that if I had a magic wand, I would use it just to bring all people together. You know what? There's real challenges that we're facing in our communities. And like I started out by saying, the people of Wisconsin are tough. They are resilient people. They have taken on the chin time and time again. They do not care if you are a Democrat or a Republican. They just want to make sure that we are bringing down the cost of everyday essentials, bringing down the cost of health care, funding their schools, making sure that our roads are taken care of, making sure that their needs are met. They know government's not the solution to every problem, but they at least expect government to understand and care about those problems. So while unfortunately there may not be a magic wand that's coming, these are still things that we can very much achieve. We can put politics aside and realize that campaigning is very different than governing, and make sure that we can help the people of the state of Wisconsin. I'm not interested in playing politics with people's lives. I am interested in doing the right thing by the people of the state of Wisconsin. And that will always be my guiding light, because my campaign is focused on the people, and it will always be focused on the people.
Well, thank you, Collin McNamara of Stevens Point, the Democratic candidate for the 24th Senate District. The election is November 5th. Collin McNamara, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much for having me today.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.